Well, hello, everybody. It is the Whiskey and History Gang. I am John Cole. With me, as always, Justin Raditz and my good friend Pete Kehoe. And special guest today, Rachel Burns. How are you, Rachel? We've been talking about this for like 2 months. We're finally.
I'm so excited, man.
How are you?
I'm great. This is the first time probably ever in my life that I get to ramble about every good and mostly absolutely terrible thing that Richard Nixon's ever done, and people are excited to listen.
I know, right? They're super excited to listen. So we do a thing here on Whiskey and History, which is how you have to pronounce it if you're ever curious. That's how it's spelled. Whiskey and History. And History. Right there above your head, right there. Whiskey.
Oh, look at that.
Whiskey and History. Okay.
History. What's in your glass? You're the guest. Go first. Tell us what you're drinking.
So I'm going to do a fresh crack today.
I like it.
If this was really a Nixon show, I'd probably be pacing my hallways, drinking scotch and rambling against the elites. But I'm going to watching some Willet Pot Still today.
And watching Patton over and over and over again.
Justin, we've talked about this. We've talked about, whether we like or hate Nixon. But Patton was my favorite movie for a little while.
I like it. Justin, what's in your glass, buddy? What's in your glass, Justin?
Thanks. Of course, especially because it's about Nixon, I had to continue the red breast. The best whiskey in the entire world. I just wish I could drink enough of it and then go find a pack of hippies and tearfully console them and try to understand where they're coming from and make it so that they understand where I'm coming from as well. But not today.
How about you, Pete? What do you got up there?
First of all, I have to say, Justin, you must be in a different tax bracket than I am. Because the red breast, you had the red breast going the last time we were on together, 2 shows ago, I think it was. And that's one of my favorites.
The trick is small sips.
Yeah, I know. You have to sparingly and do the whole, the nose and the, I am drinking, actually, this is a very good and not a very well-known pick for like under $30 in the bourbon world. It's called Larceny. And it's about, I think state minimum's like 26 or something on this bottle. And it's really good. It's got some good oak to it, just a little bit of vanilla maybe, and 92 proof, just very good bottle.
Really?
Excellent.
Good leader makes it sweet, right?
Well, I have to admit, my friends, I was laid out for the last couple of days, not feeling well in the stomach department. So I'm drinking what I'm going to call an unfashionable. So I've got some peach tea with some old-fashioned like mixer with vermouth. So it's a non-alcoholic peach old-fashioned, just in honor of the sign behind me. It's an
nice.
Nice. Gone for the bourbon, John. It cures everything.
Right? I don't know, man.
It's a COVID killer. It's a COVID killer.
I like it.
I swear to God.
Well, we're 5 minutes in, Pete, and we already have our first dick pic reference. I knew it was coming. I didn't know it'd be number 1. But,
John,
there's probably going to be a few.
You should front load the campaign buttons.
Right?
Let's just get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way. All right. Yeah. Here you go. Here you go, Donovan. If you look up, if you're watching on your phone, it might be kind of small, but they can't lick our dick. There you go, buddy.
Yeah. Those are legit.
Legitimate campaign buttons. Legitimate.
They put those on pins on purpose.
Yeah. That's
maybe they were rat fucked.
Yeah, maybe. it's quite possible. So Rachel, I know we're eager to get into our topic for today, but I would be remiss if we didn't address the elephant in the room. And please tell me how amazing it was to meet Alex Trebek.
Oh my God. There are 2 people in the world that I've ever met where I've spoken to them for 6 words, and it completely changed my life. One of them is the polarizing figure behind me, and the other one is Alex freaking Trebek. Man, that's the greatest thing I have ever done. It's probably the last thing that my dad ever saw me do. It's
That's amazing.
Oh my god.
Well, just for you, I put together a little something. If you bear with me, are you ready?
I hope so.
Is Jeopardy! A software analyst from East Lansing, Michigan, Rachel Byrne. Alex Trebek.
200.
In a 1901 speech, speak softly and carry a big stick. You'll go far.
Teddy.
Rachel.
Who is Roosevelt? Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes.
Who is Aristotle?
He's the one. Rachel Burns is from East Lansing, Michigan, software analyst whose grandfather was a champion on a game show that was on the air many, many years ago, hosted by a friend of mine, Tom Kennedy.
Yeah, my grandfather was a Name That Tune champion. Amongst many things, he won a Datsun that my dad ran into the ground, and it became his first car.
Rachel.
What is a muffler?
Yeah.
What are blinkers?
Blinkers, that's it.
Who is Wonder Woman?
Correct.
What is Old Faithful?
Correct.
What is Carrie?
Good.
Who is Farrah Fawcett?
Correct.
What is Star Anise?
Yes.
What is Stradivarius?
Yes. We'll go to Rachel in the middle. Let's see, did you come up with the correct response to our final? What is the Lend and Lease? We're going to accept that. Lend-Lease Act. You're right. And you're going to add 6,800, doubling your score to 13,600.
Pretty
awesome.
awesome.
That makes me feel great.
I edited out a few that you got wrong. It's fine.
You.
Now we'll see if I get in trouble
That's
from
awesome.
the network television people for airing that unauthorized. So we'll find out. It was worth it.
Yes.
It was worth it, darn it. So that was awesome. It was really cool. I watched it live with a bunch of our friends, of course. Well, not live, I guess, when it was released.
Yeah.
Yes. But amazing experience. I can only imagine.
Best makeup I've ever had in my life.
I absolutely love it. So,
Rachel, called Sony to come on today.
Right. So you asked us before we get going that the way you wanted to start it was just kind of give us, when we say, if somebody says Richard Nixon, what's the first thing that comes to mind? And I will be the first one to say, as these guys have done a few shows with me now, I'm not much of a history buff. Sorry, Dad. I know you watch. You were a retired history teacher. I know, and government at that. And this is also one of his favorite topics. He was on a couple shows ago with us talking about the history of Top Gun. That was pretty fascinating. But the first thing that comes to my mind really was, for me, it was kind of the turning point of presidents from being kind of the speaking point of their party and being an equal three-part of the executive, the three branches, to becoming an individual force on its own. And for good or bad, that had changed the way that presidents acted. And then I learned recently that he really is the reason why professional sports are as politically charged as they are today. So those are the two fascinating.
Man doesn't know anything about Nixon, he says.
Yeah, I know. That's about it. That's all I got. Pete, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear Richard Nixon?
The first thing that comes to mind is paranoia. We were talking before the show started a little bit about him, and just about how this guy was such a juxtaposition of so many things, right and wrong, good and bad, left and right, but he was so paranoid. I was just amazed because he would have won the 72 election in a landslide without the Watergate and without any kind of subterfuge or, breaking and entering or whatever, I mean, it was the largest electoral landslide in history, just about, I think. And, he would have had that anyway. So he was just really paranoid. That's my first thing that I think about. So,
Justin.
Before digging into Cold War history in college, I just thought Nixon was just the bad dude. Anything that happened during that time was because of him. Anything that happened during that time, or any loss of faith that we had in the government, was something that this crazy guy did, and he was just bad. He was the worst of the worst, the Grinch of the presidential lineup up until that at that point, until recent history.
Do you know what kind of guy you have to be the worst of that set of guys?
Pretty bad.
Oh boy.
Pretty bad.
Pretty bad. And Rachel, I didn't know if you wanted to add your first impressions of Nixon before you started digging in to him.
Well, so I guess not my first impressions before I started digging in, but like my snap impression when you say Nixon now, right? Like, a lot of times it's like Watergate, or it's, vice president, or it's, I'm not a crook, or you don't have Nixon to get around, or the old man trying to redeem himself. But for me, there's this book called Nixon Land by a guy named Rick Perlstein. And after reading that, for me, it was always King of the Orthogonians. And so the Orthogonians, Nixon went to Whittier College. He couldn't afford to go to Harvard. His family couldn't afford for him to go to Harvard. He got a full scholarship. They couldn't send him away because they needed him to work in their store, nice Quaker people, grocery store owners, whatever. But he goes off to Whittier College. He wants to be, the big fish in that small pond. He's the last man on the football team. He's so bad with girls that the woman he ends up marrying, Pat, he drove her to dates with other men. He was such a loser. And so when
he drove her and the dates to where they were going.
And so, this little, tiny school, well respected in the area, but kind of a podunk school, you think. He doesn't even get into their senior society. He's too much of a loser. So what he does, and this kind of really defines, I think, a lot of his political career going forward. Number one, he hates elites from then on. Even as he is one, he hates them. And then number two, he creates his own. So he gets all the losers, all the, dumb guys, all the, whatever, other guys driving their girls to dates with other men, I don't know. And starts his own society. And I really think that is, you see it over and over and over and over again in his career, where he hates the cool kids and tries to forge his own.
But he wants to be one.
That's
so
right.
badly, so badly.
All right, before we get into that, Justin, because I know that you want to get on, a little housekeeping. I just want to remind everybody that we are on ilogicmedia.com. Please go check us out. We have all kinds of fun shows all throughout the week. Pretty much every day of the week, something cool going on there. And then I did forget one thing that I have to fix real quick. The wonderful graphic at the beginning of our show, hand-drawn by a good friend of mine who grew up with Justin and who Pete knows their family as well. Our friend Lee May, he made this. So his Twitter and Instagram right there, at mleemay, and his design webpage, leemay.design. He does caricatures, all kinds of other drawings. He did this up for me. If you're looking for something for you, reach out to him and he'll take care of that. So I didn't want to forget to give a shout out to Lee.
Fantastic.
Let me make that go away now. There you go.
So to jump on where you were going, I'm going to go back just a minute. And I know I was the guy who was like, we don't really need to talk about little Tricky Dick. But the boohoo, I did a little bit of research before this podcast. I certainly didn't know it myself, but Little Tricky Dick had an older brother who was the heir apparent, similar to that of like Joe Kennedy, the elder of the Kennedy brothers.
I can't wait to get into those parallels, man.
So both Dick's older brother and younger brother passed away of tuberculosis. And at first, Tricky Dick always wanted to be as great and as awesome as his brother, who got all the attention, but never got there. And when his older brother died, he had the role of the older brother, but everybody was already like, Dick, you don't have what people call the social skills. So no. But he tried to fulfill that older brother role to his younger brother, who then died. So in terms of like child trauma, your idol is gone. You try to take up the idol's role. It doesn't work out. You fulfill his responsibilities like he did with you, and your subject dies. So you're left with holding the legacy of both. So even when this kid got ahead, he was still expected, like, what's going to happen next? Some terrible thing's going to happen to me. So, like, I got accepted into Harvard. Great. Wait, my parents say that I have to be here because the wrong kid died, or whatever Quaker environment that he was grown up in with that nightmare, situation. So, like, the boy didn't have much of a chance going out into the world anyway. He could achieve, but he could never feel comfortable with his own achievements based off of that childhood trauma, some believe.
Did the family, the lemon farm or lemon ranch or whatever that they had, failed when he was like 9 or 10, and they had to move also, correct? Wasn't that like Depression era kind of? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So, I mean,
they got the general store.
Yeah, right.
So when life gives you lemons, try to destroy the American way.
Almost.
Just a little. Oh my god.
Rachel,
just one quick reminder as well, if you have seen the previous shows, I know there's a bunch of people watching right now. Check back in with us around, probably 9:45. This show's going to go a little longer. We're going to have a virtual cheers on the end. Whoever can get in here and join us and raise a glass of whiskey to us. And I've got a bit of a surprise for everybody at the end of the show. So make sure you're checking in. If you're going to tune out for a minute, make sure you get back here by like 9:45 p.m. You're gonna enjoy it. All right, carry on, my friends.
Thanks, John. So, okay, where do we leave off, Rachel and Pete? I think
we left off at Whittier.
Yes.
And so then we went in the Navy, like the YMCA, or no?
Yeah. He was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's
reserve.
Again, parallel after parallel to somebody like the JFK. He's off in the Navy. He's doing really well.
Although JFK served in combat, and I think Nixon served World War II from California.
Yeah, reserves.
Yeah. But he was deployed. He was deployed on his ship.
Yeah.
And he decided to fund his first campaign playing poker.
That's right.
And so he instead of chasing women, finding the first thing off the boat, he's chasing 4 queens, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah, he's chasing poker games.
Yeah. Sending all his money home to Pat. That is how he funds his first congressional campaign. Justin, I think you wanted to get into that first congressional campaign quite a bit, didn't you?
A little bit. So Nixon, in his first campaign, felt that, like most things, people were going to try to push him down. And the only way that he could spook people out of thinking about voting for an incumbent that they've been voting for throughout World War II. So he starts making sensational assumptions about the other party. Sensational stuff that would force them to respond. And when they would respond, he would question whether or not their response was real or if it was dodging another sensational accusation. Does that sound like anybody? I know. But he kind of first invented and popularized, at least in California politics, the idea of openly slinging mud into the press. Certainly not the first time it's done, but it's certainly the first time that it's done without any care about the response or even an answer to the question.
I think it was the first time kind of the modern era, right? Because you have like those early battles where it's like, I'm going to write in my newspaper whatever I want, knowing that you are going to write in your newspaper, completely partisan, whatever you want. And we're just going to trade crazy things back and forth. And that's pretty plain, right? You can see it. But he's, leaking things in back channels and, throwing rocks and hiding hands. And
even in those early days, which back then, like when somebody said, my word of honor, you believed him. I caught a fish 10 feet long, my word of honor. People are like, oh, of course. That's definitely on the level. And in an area or at a time where that kind of stuff's going on, Tricky Dick's like, pretty sure that her poodle's a communist. Let's see her try to deny it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the president. Prove me wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is before he was anything.
Mm-hmm.
he was a big, pre McCarthy, anti-communist guy. Several years before McCarthy, actually. Very prescient.
Absolutely. And it continued on with this, and he had a successful career in local politics, and eventually he made it to the Senate, where he allegedly became friends with JFK when he was a junior congressman. I think did they go into the Congress in the same year? Or
they did go in the same year.
1948, right?
I think so.
I think you're right, yeah. And from there, he gets okay, but he does well. He does join the Red Scare, right? He joins McCarthy during his business. But I can't remember, was that before he was in Eisenhower's administration or during?
So Eisenhower, that administration is 1952 or 53 to 1961. And so when Nixon is in Congress, he needs somebody, he needs a them. He always needs a them. And there's a perfect, gift wrap them, right? With McCarthy in those Senate trials. And that's when he gets famous for going completely in on Alger Hiss. And Alger Hiss is one. Yeah.
Please continue.
Oh, sorry about that. But one of those elite guys. I think was he a federal civil servant? That it was.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
And, good, tall, slick, well-educated guy, accused of being a communist, has some questionable ties. I'll be honest. I can't even go back and tell you was Alger Hiss a communist or not, because the most important thing is that you get Nixon in these, kind of these early days of public congressional hearings, and he's all on the guy, and he's getting secret intelligence on the guy and all of this kind of stuff, things that are going to sound familiar later, and everyone thinks that Nixon is a hero of our country. Look at this guy rooting out this communism that we've got running rampant all in our liberal elite places and our media, and I don't know, take out fake news and put in fake movies.
Exactly. Just for our viewers who don't remember the Red Scare, there was a period in the 50s where a fellow from, it's Wisconsin, right? That's where McCarthy's from. Joe McCarthy's from Wisconsin.
Yes.
Which is so weird. They're so nice over there. This guy gets to Washington, D.C., essentially taking what Dick Nixon did and then dialing it up to 11 and just pointing out there's communists everywhere. Your neighbor, your dog, your teacher at school, all of these actors.
Maybe somebody spoiled his cheese, Justin.
It's very possible. But McCarthy grabbed on this thing that was full of bullshit, and this huge movement happened both in the government, in the Republican Party, and it affected everybody across the country. They just went nuts, and they saw communism or communists everywhere and conspiracies everywhere. Now, granted, Nixon wasn't the architect of this thing. This was mostly McCarthy's. But you're right, Rachel, like McCarthy set people up on a silver platter for Nixon to get his turn being tough on the communists. And none of it was good. And even Eisenhower hated this guy specifically because of his McCarthy shenanigans. But Eisenhower was a Republican guy. And he's like, well, we have the Republicans, and then we also have these super crazies over here that see conspiracy theories everywhere. So I'll be happy with the old Republicans, and the new Republicans will be happy with this crazy Dick Nixon guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was crazy.
All right, Pete, you tried to add there, I believe.
I was just going to say that, that era, you have to, as far as ramping up of the whole Red Scare thing, and this whole thing that Nixon really did plant the seed for the whole McCarthyism waves. It was also a combination and a confluence of a lot of things. I mean, the Cold War was like at its fever pitch. I mean, people were digging fucking bomb shelters in their backyards. Okay. I mean, you have to remember that was the heightened level of paranoia, like nationwide at that point. So, so it's not hard to see this campaign. These guys go, hey, this is a good way to control some people's, thinking and get them onto my,
sounds oddly familiar to recently. Just saying.
It does, doesn't it though?
Yeah, Donovan Schellenberger here says he believes Nixon and Elvis beat the commies.
Oh, we'll get there soon.
Yeah, we'll get there. We're
getting close.
I don't want to forget about my man Jim Brown, but I know it's in the itinerary, so we'll get back to Vietnam too. So don't worry about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
John and Rachel, please stop me if I keep driving the car and not be a polite side seat driver.
Oh man, I'm here for the Cullen commentary, man. You're the man over here.
All right, keep it rolling. Justin, we're half an hour in. Just a reminder.
Okay, so Eisenhower, I'm glad that you brought up the Cold War and that it was at its peak. On one hand, it was at its peak, but we learned, and even Dick Nixon knew this, that the peak was bullshit. We kept saying there's a bomber gap, there's a missile gap, there's a tank gap. And it was McNamara, well, they knew what it was. They knew what the reality was in terms of the intelligence we were getting. It was McNamara that made it first public, or at least semi-public, that there is no bomber gap, there is no missile gap. All of this is hysteria, which is bizarre because we have this internal domestic hysteria, the Red Scare, and while that's going on, unprecedented amounts of government spending from these government contracts go to fight this Cold War threat, this commie threat abroad. It left us completely blind and completely vulnerable to the point where at the end of Eisenhower's administration, he gave a farewell speech to the nation addressing this.
Justin, if you don't mind, I'd like to spend just a second on Nixon's vice presidential years because it's not something that we talk about a lot. Right. I think we have this odd marriage, and we've seen this over and over and over again. In our country's history, we've seen it with somebody like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. We've seen it with a JFK and an LBJ. These odd relationships where Eisenhower wasn't a politician. He's barely a Republican. Both sides were trying to draft him. We saw that later on when they had who were they trying to draft? A general in the last 15, 20 years or so. Not Colin Powell, which they tried to draft him too, but they constantly try to get an apolitical military figure because we can kind of cast all of our concerns onto this person, right? Mm-hmm. And Eisenhower was one of those guys. And so you pair him up with this, rabid, fierce, well-connected Republican, Richard Nixon. And there's a book out, The President and the Apprentice. And I don't agree with everything the guy has to say, but he talks about how these guys were learning from one another. Eisenhower didn't know anything about domestic policy, other than creating roads, which is something that he brought back from Germany. But, he knew how to handle the military and maybe a little bit of foreign policy. But he sends Nixon out, shockingly, to be kind of a real interested party in kind of civil rights stuff. He'd send him out to handle a lot of foreign policy things. This guy actually got an education in the presidency. However, that almost didn't happen. So with, early on in the campaign, Eisenhower sees this guy might not be on the up and up. There might be something funny going on with his campaign funds. Who knows what the hell is going on? And that's when we get the Checkers speech, right? My wife wears a nice Republican cloth coat. You think she's out here in mink coats, but we're just getting by.
But did Eisenhower help him though during that scandal?
In the end.
Yes, after it was like
much.
after the Checkers speech.
Yeah. He's ready for him to go. But the
Only
speech is
I
so
think in my
compelling
theory
to
is
the
because-
Americans because you believe the guy on TV.
Go ahead, Pete.
No, I'm just going to say, I think the reason that he did at the very end was because of the Checker speech, because there was a groundswell of public, love for Nixon after that whole thing, I don't think
Absolutely.
Eisenhower would have, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a political move, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah. And it's so interesting that
He just had to go along with public sentiment.
Yeah.
Right.
it's too far along in the campaign to really kind of get rid of him. And he was still ready to get rid of him. But that little bit of redemption kind of keeps him hanging on. And first, in many examples, we think of him, you think of the JFK debates and you think, oh, the scruffy guy, he doesn't know how to handle the media. He doesn't know how to, handle television. This man was a media master. He's the master of spin.
Mm-hmm. Master of spinning in the print. It took him a little bit to figure out how to do it in TV, which was a lot harder for him. But you're definitely you're dead on. Nixon during the Eisenhower administration definitely was kind of like a Dick Cheney, but without any of the real power.
Yeah.
He did the work, but he was still kind of.
Yeah, I think it's probably what we're going to see right now. Right.
Yeah.
I think we've seen, President Biden deploy Kamala Harris, probably because of his, age. He's tired, whatever. But he's able to send her into a lot of different places where you wouldn't necessarily expect the vice president to be. Right.
Of course.
I'm jumping ahead temporarily here, but I have to think about Hubert Humphrey and what a needle-nosed little nasally nerd that he was. And I mean, in comparison to Nixon, right? I mean, we're kind of. He was kind of Nixon in Nixon's earlier years, almost. You know what I mean? As far as TV, go ahead.
No, you're right. That was Nixon also kind of showed up on the scene during the weird polar shift in the Democratic Party when Johnson pissed off all of the Southern Democrats for continuing the civil rights movement.
Oh, you're jumping ahead. Yeah, he capitalizes that.
Yeah,
I think
we
that's
jumped
when
way ahead. I'm sorry.
To understand, being on television and capturing the public minds and the whole silent majority and all that. We are skipping ahead a little. I guess we've talked about kind of that relationship with JFK. I know that there's a connection that you brought out.
Era too.
Oh, but wait, I do want to go. Let's go back.
Go ahead.
Pete, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say, I did. Rachel, we just met tonight. I am a composer and I produce music for audiovisual stuff. I did the theme for this show. And I did a 2-hour documentary on Eisenhower during the Cold War that was on public television about 5 years ago. And I learned a lot about Nixon and about and Eisenhower especially. Your comment about Eisenhower barely being a Republican, which is totally true. They basically signed him up at the 11th hour, kind of thing. But Nixon
voted for himself as an independent or something, yeah.
Yeah, right. And I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but anyway, I just wanted to just throw that out there that I learned a lot about the Eisenhower years during that project because I had never really spent any time history-wise. Eisenhower was kind of neglected, I think. It was kind of like when I grew up, it was up to Truman, and then atomic bomb, and then Eisenhower, and then all of a sudden JFK.
Yeah.
The only thing I've ever cared about Eisenhower, really, when I was growing up, he was the president when my mother was born. It's probably all I could have told you about him until I got to college. and then of course you learn about the interstate, and you learn about Eisenhower the general and all of these other things. But the most remarkable thing I think of his presidency, and Justin, you've got a clip queued up, don't you? Is his lesson that he had for us that we still haven't listened to.
The military-industrial complex, yes.
Indeed. Justin, would you like me to play that clip?
Yes, please, John.
Which clip was that? You gave me 3. Not FDR, obviously. Clip 1 for Eisenhower?
Yes, the one that doesn't say Nixon got his.
I believe it's this one.
Crises there will continue to be. In meeting them, whether foreign or domestic, great or small, there is a recurring temptation to feel that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. But each proposal must be weighed in the light of a broader consideration: the need to maintain balance in and among national programs. Balance between the private and the public economy. Balance between the clearly necessary and the comfortably desirable. Balance between actions of the moment and the national welfare of the future. Good judgment seeks balance in progress. Lack of it eventually finds imbalance and frustration. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. The prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
John, I think we can pause it there. It's a little longer than I thought, but essentially what he's saying is, dudes, there's this thing and it's everywhere, and it's getting into our government, and it's changing how we do things.
Absolutely.
I can only imagine. I can really imagine just the pressure that it took to make the legislative and to pass the idea of building this giant industrial complex of military and becoming this huge expenditures in military, and how much people were like, whoa, man, that's a lot of spending. We shouldn't be spending that money. And now you fast forward to today, and it's like, if you try to talk about not spending that money, whoa, we have to spend that money. We got to have that money.
You think in World War II, we had to take our largest corporations, right? We had to take General Motors and Ford and all of these companies and stop what they're doing to make our tanks, to make our equipment, pretty similar to what we've just had to do with COVID-19. But after World War II, we have companies that specialize in these things, right? What is it? Betsy DeVos's brother. I can't even think of the name of the company. It's been through so many different, namings. Was it Blackwater at one time? But what's the security company? I can't even name it.
Black Forest.
It was Blackwater, and now it's
security.
It's gone through a few different security officers. No, that's the security company. Security.
Yeah, real tricky stuff. The scary part is, it's very easy to take the military-industrial complex, which has seeded itself in our economy and our government. But the thought of something that big that is infiltrating the government and taking over our scientific communities and destroying what he described as free colleges? What? We had free colleges?
Well, free of thought. Free of thought.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Talk to somebody 60 years or older in a part-time job to pay their tuition.
Exactly. But it's creeping in everywhere. And in a sense, the industry is wagging the tail of the government. And if there's people standing in the way of that funding or of that industry, they'll use the government to take them over and to put them in line for them. That's kind of how we end up with.
The company was Halliburton.
Was Blackwater. Then it was XP Services. Now it's Academy. Academy with an I to make it cute.
Oh, it's cute. Yeah, it's cute. Like iLogic. I like it.
John, can we play the other clip, which is significantly shorter? It was
for sure.
It was a part of his speech that was directed specifically at Nixon, but it almost sounds like he's talking about Trump, or dare I say, us Americans in general.
Yeah. What were you saying, Pete?
No, go ahead.
There.
As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect.
Man, that gives me chills a little bit, not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I might try to live that out tomorrow.
So thank you for the clips. Pete, I've been stepping on you all night. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all.
I don't know why we're ignoring Pete. He's old enough to have lived through all of this, basically.
Come on.
Very good point, and very true. I do remember, actually. Well, we're fast forwarding. We're in the Eisenhower years. Suddenly, we're back in the early 1970s. Okay, I remember seeing the Watergate hearings on television, and my mother saying, you should pay attention because you're going to want to remember this. This is, and I still have the copy of the day that Nixon resigned, August 9th, 1974. I had the Detroit Free Press and, I forget, a couple of other papers, Chicago Tribune. I still have those newspaper issues because that was, the most.
Yeah, that was history.
Time. Oh, and we think the last 4 years were turbulent. You guys have no fucking idea. I'm telling you.
I think about that.
Yeah. I'm just, an old guy. All right, talking. Everything was on edge, and everything was, on the brink of collapse at that point politically. It had never been tested before. Our democracy, our Constitution had never been tested before like that, ever. There had been one impeachment proceeding for that, Andrew Johnson. big fucking deal. That was nothing. You know, this was like earth shattering, you know, ground, you know, just, you know, and I don't remember, I remember so many, first of all, G. Gordon Liddy just passed away 2 weeks ago, I think.
Rest in something.
And he was one of the only guys that never folded on Nixon. Everybody else talked. Bob Haldeman, you know, Ehrlichman, John Dean, they all caved in like cheap card houses. But G. Gordon Liddy never gave it up for Nixon, and he did time in the federal penitentiary, and you know, and became a really successful talk show host afterwards, which is good for him. You know,
yeah,
that's the American way, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a cataclysmic thing in American society, you guys. I mean, whatever. Pandemic is probably the closest thing that I can remember in my lifetime to being anywhere near as cataclysmic. You know. It shook the foundations of everything.
You know,
I assume that you'll educate me on this, but one of the feelings I always had about Nixon was, you know, after Watergate and after everything, like the whole political move on by the next people that took over, who are like, yeah, we got to move on, forget about that. We're not really going to dwell on this. We're not going to punish him. We're not going to put him in jail. We're not going to, you know, prosecute. We just have to move on. And part of me feels like that was a huge mistake and is probably part of the reason why every president since has grasped a little bit more power, because they know so far that nobody's been held really responsible for anything they've really gotten away with. And I feel like we're kind of in that position again, where we have a new president who's being either pressured for or against continuing this, you know, pressure on the previous president. Maybe I'm wrong by that, but that's kind of always how I felt about Nixon, is that letting him get away with what we let him get away with set the tone for allowing each president after to get a little bit more power.
Honestly, John, I think that him resigning is the most that might have happened to him. There was a lawyer in his administration, I can't remember who it was, that I was listening to on C-SPAN or one of those things that, you know, I watch for fun. And
the guy with the flat top?
Yeah. Not Obotai. No, that's the Watergate special prosecutor, Archibald Cox. But
Archie Cox.
But one of them was saying if he would have just held on, nothing may have happened. He may have survived.
You know what? That's true.
I think the Republicans of that day and politicians of that day were more committed to country over party, because it was Republicans who did eventually pressure him to resign, but he might have gotten away with it.
It's possible.
He could have easily. As a matter of fact, it was his paranoia that kept him from getting away with it, to be honest with you. Back to the paranoia at the beginning of the broadcast. You know, my first initial thought of Dick Nixon is always paranoia. And that's what ruined him. It wasn't the fact that, I mean, it was the fact that he was plagued with self-doubt all of his life. And, you know, it goes back to when he was a kid for a lot of reasons. You know, you can do the Freudian thing for a while. He ruined his own political career when it was at its zenith, you know? And I always felt sorry for him in that respect, you know? He fucked things up, man, and he didn't have to. You know, he was the most successful, you know, election ever in 1972. You know, and Watergate had nothing to do with helping him out with that. They did at that. It was the biggest bungling of something that was totally unnecessary and totally did nothing but ruin him. You know.
One thing we haven't done is really talk about what Watergate is or was, you know.
Before we do, I'm just going to catch us up if that's okay, Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we got he's done being the vice president. Mm-hmm. We know what happens when he goes against JFK. Sweaty lip. Not going to work.
Sweaty lips. Yeah.
He tries to run for governorship of California, and he loses, and he gives this kiss-off speech about how
Fake news.
the reporters don't report the full truth, and they're going to miss not having Dick Nixon around because he's done.
To kick
Won't
around.
have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
So let's move forward. A lot of stuff happened with Johnson. The biggest thing, and Rachel, you correct me if I'm wrong, just because this is my understanding, and I touched on it earlier. The big switch in the Democratic Party after Johnson's administration.
Yeah. So there are a few things that are plaguing, LBJ, right? So from the very beginning of his administration, he's embroiled, with Vietnam, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And he knows that that's not going very well at all. His, big thing domestically, of course, is the Great Society. I think it's really cool to juxtapose Richard Nixon and LBJ, right? Because you have two guys, because I think we might have some time to get to the cuddly side of Nixon. There's a lot of good things that Richard Nixon, did. There are a lot of surprisingly liberal things that Richard Nixon did.
Yeah.
And LBJ as well. I think I always thought of LBJ and his civil rights, campaign as being kind of, this guy is of this era and from this place, and he's doing, the right thing because he knows that he's kind of a dinosaur. Not quite true, actually. I found out later in life that he actually taught in schools at the border, really had interactions with Latino communities and things like that. A lot of his civil rights platform was quite genuine. So you have this old crazy Southerner who is all about civil rights, and you've got the guy who comes after him, and he's doing some of the right things, but every single thing is cynical, right? It's all I'm playing these different people against each other. EPA, I don't care much about that. But back to what you were saying, Justin. The switch is that when you have the civil rights legislation of the 1960s, a solidly Democratic South, and LBJ knows that this kiss off, it's, you guys are now with the Republicans. Hopefully I've made the right political calculus in getting enough, invested Black voters into the Democratic Party, but, the rest of you guys are for the streets. And there is a street sweeper named Richard Nixon who's coming to town. So not only does he, capitalize on the silent majority, you're tired of the turmoil in your streets, you're tired of the looting and the protesting and the whatever, come join our fold. Not only that, but he's out in back channels screwing around with our international diplomacy, screwing any chance that LBJ has to get us out of Vietnam.
Yes, thank you. Oh my gosh, yes. So what was it? Johnson was making an incredible effort to try to end the war because he said, I'm not going to get my other election anyway. I'm going to clean this up. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't get through.
Not run again, yeah.
Nixon, and was it actually at the recommendation of I'm forgetting Henry Kissinger. Was it Henry Kissinger's recommendation to say?
The recommendation of Henry Kissinger, yeah.
Like
at least the way Henry Kissinger tells it today.
I don't know.
Yeah. But they essentially told the Vietnamese peace delegation, North Vietnamese peace delegation, if you guys want to end the war, you better deal with Tricky Dick. Don't deal with these guys. We're going to get you a better deal. Just hold out. And once, of course, they chose with Dick Nixon, and Dick Nixon's solution to Vietnam, at least for his first term, was it's dialed up to 11. Let's see what happens when we dial up to 111. And off we went. Let's just turn up the volume on military spending on this war against a country the size of what, Delaware? It's nuts. And I know that we're skipping over a whole bunch of stuff, but like.
It's all right. We're about an hour in, and I don't want to go much longer than.
Should this be a two-parter?
Nah, man. Let's just keep rolling. And like I was telling Pete, Yeah, I can always in post edit put this back on the webpage in 3 bite-sized chunks, so it's fine. Let's just keep rolling. We still are averaging about 20 live viewers the whole time, so let's keep it rolling.
Yay, us and the 20 people who view us. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Keep it rolling, but I do want to, maybe about 15 minutes more, and then we'll get into what I have planned.
Man, we really haven't even sunk our teeth in. This is like,
All right,
we
God.
can't get too much into Watergate, right? Watergate probably does need its own.
all right,
Yeah,
just
everything
keep
about
rolling, Justin, and catch us up to where we want to get into Watergate, and
Okay.
we'll do that.
okay,
We got
so
plenty of time. It's fine. People are enjoying.
we got to talk about, oh gosh, there's just so much stuff that he did that was weird about Vietnam.
I know.
Jim Brown says Vietnam wasn't a war; it was a police action.
100% correct.
Yes. Well, wait, it was until Johnson made it a war for those torpedoes that they shot but never did. Right?
Well, Congress never declared it a war. Congress must declare war.
Yes. They gave him war
Correct.
powers.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And that's actually become, a not uncommon thing.
No,
Yeah,
Bart,
to have
you are
powers
awesome,
without
Bart.
declaring
I just
war.
want to say Bart is awesome. Bart is awesome.
And so again, all of these different precedents that take our country as it is supposed to work and send it somewhere else.
So let's say this. Dick Nixon's in the presidency. And the mindset of Dick Nixon is that we think he's a pretty old guy. He's kind of like, on the surface, he feels like a safe choice, right? We just had a turbulent time with Johnson. We had an insane time with JFK. It's
The
been a
Democratic
crazy.
Party's in complete shambles.
Oh
right?
yeah,
You get Chicago '68, which is
there's riots
Oh.
everywhere.
Episode
We
as
don't
well.
understand these kids.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's the MC5. Oh, that's I'm sorry.
Bobby Kennedy. Come on.
Oh.
Or Dr. King. I mean, 68's a horrible, horrible time. Horrible time.
And now we got this tricky Dick guy who we know kind of represents. We know that he's good and he's like an old faithful guy, but he kind of really represents the worst of the old world.
But yeah, it's kind of like if Bob Dole had won.
Yeah. There's definitely a transition of how politics work moving forward after Nixon that weren't anywhere close to how things worked before him. So he's like a big watershed moment, except he himself, the presidency as the country goes through this transition, is the worst of the old and also the worst of the new. He was just bad coming and going
Justin,
in terms of what he was trying to do.
I mean, let's be fair. We did get the EPA out of them, Clean Air Act, safe
Yes.
drinking water. There was OSHA. I mean, we had some good stuff going on.
Well, that was the
We
price
did.
he had to
A
pay
lot
to
of
do
good
all the
stuff.
stuff he really wanted to do. Nixon did not care much for domestic policy. He wanted to be the guy on the national stage. We also got Nixon opening up China. He liked to be in the spotlight on the international stage.
Yes.
He wanted to achieve. He wanted to be the Franklin, right?
Mhm.
Going back to his old college, societies. But he's a lifelong Orthogonian.
Yes. There are some people that argue, or there are some views of thought that believe that JFK was the last president, i.e., he can kind of do what he wants and people are going to leave him alone. Kind of like Eisenhower got to say our country doesn't work anymore because of this big military thing. But like JFK tried to do things like straight up end war, straight up avoid greater conflict, and 2 weeks after he decided that he was going to pull out of Vietnam entirely, he did. And then we have Johnson, who's like, well, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. But people feel that he was also pressured to continue the war and to continue feeding the military-industrial complex. And when it got to Nixon, people felt that Nixon might have made some sort of secret deal with these new Southern Democrats that are now new Southern Republicans, and that they were going to reconstruct him. And the thought behind this, and I know that I'm going crazy here. But again, this is just a thought that's out there. There's a feeling that believes that Dick Nixon did everything that he wanted for the party that got him his dream after his career was washed up. And the second term was all going to be Dick Nixon's turn. He can do whatever the heck he wants. So a lot of the stuff that he did in terms of like, okay, well, we're going to get a way out of the war. Okay, well, I'm going to open up China. Okay, well, I guess we're going to take another look at civil rights. These are big things that he did. Oh, okay, I guess we're just not going to, we're going to dial back the Cold War and make the top with Russia. These are things that he did at the beginning of or gearing up for his second term, where he felt like, the heck with all this stuff. And this is it. I'll end the conspiracy part. People feel that the reason why he got caught with Watergate, which, to be perfectly honest, it's not great, definitely is an example of how he approaches all things, not straight on. But at the same time, people thought that maybe it was the Watergate and the loss of support within the inner workings of the Republican Party that were a consequence to him for doing these big things like opening up China, ending the war in Vietnam, and creating detente with the Soviets. People were like,
really?
No, Nixon, F you, you're out. Done with the conspiracy part.
That's one I've never heard before. That's so crazy. Any of it could be true. Any of it could be true. Again, a guy who would have already won in a landslide in 1972.
Yeah.
Doing these silly tricks, right? The rat fucking. That's something that comes from University of Southern California. So these are tricks that people would have played in college student body elections, right? So we're gonna take down your flyers, or we're gonna put up fake ones or something like that.
Yep.
In a presidential election, you get stuff that's so silly. The Democratic Party has a fundraiser plan.
Yeah.
Oh, well, somebody phoned us up and told us that you canceled it. Somebody ordered 1,000 pizzas. All of this really dumb stuff. And Watergate, the break-ins. Wasn't it the commissioner? He was later the commissioner of the NBA. Was it Larry O'Brien's office?
Oh,
Who's the head of the DNC? And he, guys from Cuba, like Cubans from Miami or something like that, who are breaking in to get some documents, something that's probably happened, hundreds of times. Honestly, I hate to be like a both sides here in any situation, but probably everybody probably did it. And these guys are so stupid.
Rachel, it's like when the Houston Astros got caught cheating in baseball. They're not the only ones stealing signs and cheating in baseball. They just got caught.
Yeah.
But screw them. But they're so dumb. One of the guys tapes the door, and a security guard, like a regular security guard. And I don't know how much the night security guard is super serious. I know if I were a night security guard in 2021, I'd probably be sitting on my iPad, sleeping, who knows what. This guy goes to check a door, and it's loose. There's tape on it. He's calling it in, and it's like, holy crap. And nobody cares, right? You report this in the Washington Post. You report it in the New York Times. And there's that podcast, I think Slate does it, Slow Burn. The first season is on Watergate. And the title Slow Burn comes because in 1970, was it 1 or 2? 1972, nobody cared.
And nobody cares.
3 lines in the WAPO. Okay. And then by 1974, we know, holy crap. What did he know? When did he know it? Where are those, however many minutes it takes?
Yeah, and I mean, it's weird because Johnson, the president prior, had pretty much publicly said that all of his Texas elections were purchased.
Yeah.
And he's out in the open with it. Meanwhile, Nixon is getting, he's getting impeached over it. And granted, it might be like one of those situations in which those who are trying to get rid of Dick Nixon kind of found, what is it? Who's that guy who's the Scarface guy from Chicago? he wasn't arrested for being a
Capone?
gangster. He was arrested
Yeah,
for
Al
tax
Capone,
fraud
yeah.
Tax
or mail
evasion,
fraud or whatever.
Capone.
Yeah,
Al Capone.
yeah. Thank you, Al Capone. So but we're still, Rachel. We're still like, we're not even talking about the worst of the worst, and we're not talking about Vietnam either. Like, we kind of touched on it. There's just so much stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I feel like we're just scratching the surface and not really getting into the juicy stuff.
Barely, not even.
Well, you know what, guys? We can always, come back this summer and we can get deeper into things. We can always schedule a part 2.
Ooh, I like that.
But we're here now, so what else do we have to get into,
Yes.
Justin? I told the people that I'd put out a link around 10 o'clock with a virtual cheers link. So, let's keep it going strong. We got 21 minutes. Let's keep it strong.
Gosh, I'll say this. Let's do final statements about Nixon. We had our first impressions. Let's do our final impressions. Does that sound good, John?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's so fascinating when we talk about these things, and it's not necessarily Nixon specific, but when we talk about this era of politics and we talk about how popular the idea of social networks were and how popular the topics of let's make sure we have an educated, let's make sure we have a healthy, let's make sure we have safety nets set up for the American people because we have this amazing economy that's just driving and driving and driving, and let's put it to work for the people, and how that just slowly just faded out of existence. And how it wasn't a Democrat liberal thing. It was both sides. It was conservatives that wanted to take care of people as they got older. It was conservatives that wanted, to make sure people were healthy. It was everybody. And then it just kind of went away kind of shortly after this era. The whole concept is just fascinating to me. What a national, everybody was in on it. Let's move this war machine. Let's take this money. Let's get everybody taken care of. And then it just kind of went away. I guess it's a topic for another day to talk about why all of that changed. But that's this era of politics just always gets me so frustrated because we were on the precipice of being one of the first nations to have universal health care and universal education, and then it all just went away. Pete, what you think, buddy?
Well, as far as Nixon's to Justin's, kind of epilogue, our first impression and our last impression of Nixon. I'm going back to that. I think he realized not only the impact that they had on the American political system, and on our democracy, but also I think he, the David Frost interviews, did you guys see any of those? Okay.
I didn't.
Probably on. They were the first interviews with Nixon after. He was he was a recluse at San Clemente, after resigning for a lot of years. And David Frost interviewed him. I couldn't tell you what year. I could Google it, but it was. He realized the impact that he had on American society and on the world, at large also, and I think he had some regrets. And I remember seeing that remorse in his face and in the tone of his voice in some of those interviews. And you know what? If you haven't seen those, they're well worth seeing.
Yeah.
You probably get more information from those interviews as far as the real Richard Nixon than you will in any, academic text or, anything about Watergate or any history book. I think he really was remorseful as far as what he had done and how he had thwarted his destiny, and there's still a Nixon library and there's still a lot of Richard Nixon fans, and he did a lot of great things in this country under his tenure, and I feel sorry for him, I guess. I think that's my final impression on Nixon is that I feel sorry for him because he did a lot of things that he didn't have to do that fucked things up for him. And in the long run, if he hadn't done those things, I think he would have had a glorious legacy, comparatively, So.
And let us not forget also that we teased that we would talk about the lessons of that administration that could be, applied to the current situation. So let's also end that. But let's finish your final impression, and then we'll talk about how it relates to what is currently or has just occurred over the last year and a half. Go ahead, Justin.
Okay.
Oh, Rachel, did you go the last time?
I think so. But if you've got some final thoughts to wrap us up.
Sure thing. Well, I don't want to. Of course, I want to kick it over to you. I just didn't want to jump in line or jump ahead.
Oh no, Bob.
Cool.
By all means, I can go. Yeah.
Please.
So I think it's really going to be interesting. When I first became aware of Richard Nixon was really during a lot of that kind of farewell tour time, right? Nixon on the lecture circuit. Nixon on the interview circuit, really, as Pete was saying, showing some remorse, for a lot of what he did, what he and a lot of, lower level members of administration. I think we kind of touched on just how many people, ratted out a lot of what happened in the administration. But a lot of those lower level people who really saw that Nixon administration, and I've worked in an executives administration. It's a lot of young people. It's a lot of people scrapping and making their career. And a lot of those young people now are 80-year-old men who are still very loyal to the president, and still, whether it be for their own career preservation or whether it be for, kind of edifying the good that Richard Nixon did, that you hear a lot of apologetics, and much of it rightly so. We did touch a little bit on a lot of the good that came out, environmental protections, Title IX, things like that. And so we have that. And I think it's really interesting, because not to tip my hand too much, but I listened to a podcast. It was that Freakonomics or something like that. And they were looking at our healthcare system today and the inefficiencies in it, the problems with it, a lot of those things, looking at issues that even universal healthcare, the way that we have it now, haven't been able to fix and things like that. And they interviewed Alex Azar, who was Secretary of Health and Human Services under President Trump. And when I heard him, and I can't recall every detail that he had, but as I was listening to him talk about some of the things that he was pursuing, and I can't say whether or not they were things that, were directed from the White House or things that were really kind of his own mind. But some of the things that he was pursuing, it made sense. It made perfect practical sense. And it makes sense that if you are a hardcore conservative who's given something like universal health care, what are you going to do with that? You're going to find efficiencies. You're going to try to do some of those things. And that was, like I said, it was the first time that I heard something from the previous administration. I'm like, oh, that's actually good. And it was completely thwarted. It didn't go anywhere. None of what he was trying to do. A lot of what he was able to do has been suspended under our current administration, only because everything has been suspended under our current. It's really kind of like, hey, pause it all. Let's see what we can keep and see what we need to throw out. But that was interesting to me. That a broken clock is right twice a day. Nixon might have been right. He might have been right, 5 times a day. Kind of looking back on things, but he really, really, really tried to set himself up as kind of the academic, foreign policy genius who was above the fray, as did Henry Kissinger. And you're looking at these guys like, dude, you are the fray. Like, what in the hell? But it will be interesting to see where we go in our wild moment that we've recently had.
We lost him. We lost him.
I was about to hand it up to Justin. Justin's gone.
That's okay. Pete, what else you got, buddy, while we wait for Justin?
Well, I'm just
Oh,
going to.
there he is.
There you
go. There you are.
Rachel's powerful words blocked out my phone.
Pete, you were responding.
Magnetic personality.
Mm-hmm. You were responding to what Rachel said.
Very quickly, just about Nixon believed in a lot stronger public health system, and
yes,
and he was a big proponent for big corporations to pony up and all your employees should have full health. I mean, complete coverage. And I mean, so many things that are, when you really, again, when I grew up, Nixon was evil. Okay. He was, demonized, and he was,
he was an old square. He was a number of things. Yeah.
And in retrospect, you look at a lot of the things. I mean, EPA, OSHA, the Clean Air Act, so many environmental things that are just anathema to most Republicans these days. Completely boom, and I'm amazed at, and the fact, and this is the big thing that I remember again, being the old man here amongst you youngsters, at the juggling of Brezhnev and Mao at the same time. That was
how do we not even touch on that?
It's too complex.
That's a whole episode in and of itself.
Yes.
Guys, right?
I don't know how we're going to work whiskey into that one, but yes.
And lots of, oh boy. Unbelievable what the guy did. Absolutely unprecedented in the history of the world. Seriously, in the history of the world, not just the United States. Juggling that. It's such a precarious time between all three countries. We're not even talking economics. Mostly we talk in terms of economics these days, right? Not at all. We're like life and death shit.
I think because of Richard Nixon, in a lot of ways, we're able to focus on economics right now with some of the things that he did in the foreign policy.
You know what? I would absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. He made it possible to get beyond the political and, military aspects of, our differences and our, we were in a stasis for so long as far as, just a rigid, there were 30 or 40 years or maybe more in the 20th century where not just trade, we always talk about the almighty Benjamin, right? But socially, politically, and militarily, we were in a stasis that we were locked into a gridlock kind of thing that we couldn't get out of for a long time. And Nixon was really, he was the impetus, probably.
Yes.
He
was moving those chess pieces between China and Brezhnev, who was more aloof than our own beloved Reagan in terms of mental acuteness.
Oh yeah, he's more of a Harry Truman, man.
Yeah, but I think you're right. And what's genius is that he was moving those two players around just to get more of what he wanted, which is that's a whole episode on its own.
It is absolutely.
But John, if I can, yes. Although John, if I can I throw in my final thought?
Yes, please.
We can bring
done, I have a little game to play.
Okay.
A new feature on Whiskey in History. So when you're done, I would like to tell the listeners that I did put the link to StreamYard into the chat wherever you are. You will not be on until I bring you on, so don't worry about that. But please make sure you close the tab wherever you are listening to us from so that the echoes don't come back. Because once you are in the studio, you will be able to hear us. You will be able to see the show, hear the show. You will not need your tab open. Please close whatever device you are watching us on so that we don't get an echo when I bring you on. And Justin, close us out, my friend.
I think Nixon is possibly one of the most approachable historical presidents for our current generation. The man himself might have earned the very position which he eventually got, but he earned it by not playing fair. And in the end, the very beast of his own actions overcame his presidency and had terrible, terrible echoes in in American political environment ever since. We had Nixon Nixon or McCarthy is a generation one. You have to understand that the young people, or some of the young people that were on Nixon's staff, which he released because they were getting too independent, were Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. And when Nixon was gone and Ford was in, who ran that administration? Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. And who's been huge players in the way that Republicans approach things, domestically and foreign? Those guys. And now we have our third generation started from this man who could have accomplished great things in spite of himself. We have our third generation Trump and or the QAnon folk that were based off of his methodologies and born out of his own strategies. So he's neurotic. He's very much an everyman, and he's also very much an insider all at the same time. But what he ultimately is a person who wasn't able to stand up to the job morally as a person and as a human being because of perceived weaknesses of himself. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It does.
Well, before we get into the end here, I'd like to do a few things. Thank you, Rachel, very much for suggesting the topic and for joining us on it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Please keep an eye out. You can look at the scroller underneath us, and it will show you the topics for the next 2 shows and the dates. Save the date. Hopefully, Pete can join us for the next one. I know it's a Thursday, so you said you didn't know if you could or not. But May 13th, the Mayor Pingree episode. So we are going to drink Valentine Whiskey's 13-year aged blended whiskey from Valentine down in Detroit. And we're going to have a new friend of the show, Mickey Lyons, a Detroit historian and drink aficionado, going to join us. And she actually wrote a book on basically the villains of all the founding fathers of Detroit. And Pingree makes a brief appearance in there, but she's going to expand upon her knowledge of Pingree while we drink Mayor Pingree whiskey. I think that's going to be fun. And then Monday, May 24th, if Pete is still hopped up on drugs, it'll be even more fun, to go over the Mormon King of Pete Ryland. So Pete's having another surgery recovery, so it'll be a lot of fun to have him on. Just for the record, Pete, I had 2 vertebrae fused and a spinal fusion, and that day, 3 hours after I woke up from surgery, I called into my sports podcast and still took part in it 3 hours after surgery. I don't remember anything I said, but
John, we know that your dedication to work is legendary. You don't need to rub it in our face all the time.
Oh no, where did Pete go? We need him for the next phase.
He's ashamed now. He can never show his face again after a story like that.
No, I need him. Pete, we need Pete. We can't play the game without Pete, so we need you.
There we go.
Are you ready?
No, I'm sorry, John.
Right.
Onward at this game.
For some reason, I'm back.
I know. Right. All right.
So,
let me make a few adjustments.
Your surgeries you were talking about.
Nothing. I was just saying that I did a podcast on fantasy sports 3 hours after back surgery, and I don't remember.
He's trying to one up your surgery story, Pete. We're now officially in old man zone. If we're trying to see who hurt harder and who could do more on their pain meds.
I think Rachel could have seen this next part coming, but let's play Jeopardy, my friends.
Hey!
Let's play Jeopardy, my friends.
Yay!
This is Jeopardy.
Oh boy!
All right. What we're gonna do is we're gonna raise our hands. I'm gonna call. Okay.
Okay.
Are you ready? Are you ready to play? Are you ready to relive the dream? All right. All right. She's got the clicker. All right. Here we go.
Here.
Question. I'm not going to actually ask you to answer categories. I'm just going to give questions. All right, here we go. Nixon had 2 secretaries of state, William P. Rogers and this man, who kept the post after Ford took over. Justin.
Donnie Rumsfeld.
Incorrect, sir.
Oh, no.
Anybody else? 3.
I'm ashamed.
Oh,
I have known it, but I don't know it today.
The answer is Henry.
Doug. Kiss me,
Right,
yeah.
sorry. Who is?
I think I'm on the NSA, yeah.
Duh.
Okay. Extra bonus point if you know his middle name.
Is it
Asshole.
Anschluger.
Alfred. Oh, wait. Where did my filter go? I thought I clicked on it. I'm so sorry. Katie, my wonderful wife, helped me with this. Watch this.
Oh,
Hey! Good job, Katie.
That's why I said, Pete, you can't leave. I need you. Yeah. All right.
Oh, this is
I
great.
wasn't trying to leave.
All right. Next question, my friends. He wasn't a friendly ghost, but Nixon's head of health, education, and welfare was also Reagan's Secretary of Defense. Rachel.
Casper.
Who is Casper Weinberger?
Casper.
Indeed.
Is he the guy who said that he was in control of the government when Reagan was shot?
No, that was
That was a man who needed a refresher before addressing the press.
I love it. All right, I'm going to butcher this guy's name, but
he was the chief of staff, actually.
Right.
All right, next question. Robert Planout, a buddy who lent Nixon the money for the Western White House, made a fortune with this invention.
I was just looking at this, actually.
And shout out to Barry Cole, who researched and sent me these questions, a former leader of the Petoskey
Where would
quiz
you be
bowl.
without your dad? Huh?
I failed Mr. Cole.
The aerosol spray can.
Oh.
Good for him.
Spray can. All right. The next category. Huh? This member of Nixon's administration was the first man of Greek descent to serve as Rachel.
Spiro Agnew.
Who is
That's
Spiro
two.
Agnew? Indeed.
Spiro T. Agnew was a governor?
When I found out that he resigned for reasons not related to Watergate.
Aha.
Yeah.
Bonus
Taxes,
point.
right?
Really?
Bonus point if you know what state he was governor of.
Maryland.
Maryland, indeed. Well played, Rachel.
Wow.
Very good, Rachel.
That's 1 out of 3 ain't bad.
All right. This man was Secretary of Treasury and also of Labor for Nixon. He was later Secretary of State for Reagan.
Is that Reagan? R-E-G-A-N?
I don't know.
I think
Cyrus
no, he was chief of
Vance.
Oh, he's chief of staff. Yeah.
Cyrus Vance?
Oh, man. No. My dad has bested you again. George Shultz.
George
I would have failed your dad's class.
I know, right? All right. The next one will be in the form of a date. You tell me the significance of it. August 8th, 1974.
Was that the Saturday Night Massacre? Or was
No,
No,
that's Nixon resigned.
The day Nixon resigned. Well played, Pete. You get one. You're on the board.
Yay.
January 27th, 1973.
Gonna say Archibald Cox was assigned to the special investigator.
Did he vote to lower the voting age to 18?
No, he did not. Rachel?
Is it the massacre? The Saturday Night Massacre?
The date Nixon authorized the end of the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War.
Authorized it. Okay. All right.
All right, and here's the obscurest one.
Oh, really?
December 2nd, 1970.
Is that a word, John? That's not a word, John.
Yeah, sure it is. The obscurest.
Did he set OSHA?
You know what I
Did he
meant.
establish OSHA, the Clean Air Act?
Oh, so
Did he
close, my
No.
friend. The day he signed the executive order establishing the EPA.
I wrote my first
That was-
term paper on that in high
Close
school.
Hey guys, thanks for playing that game with me. It entertained me. It entertained
Yeah, I did so
me.
well.
My dad wrote tough ones. I told him these guys know what they're talking about. You can't give me any softballs. It's got to be straight down the pipe.
Your dad rose to the
well,
challenge, man. Thank you.
He
Thank
bested
you.
us on the finer details.
All right. Well, it's not too late. If you've seen the comments, there is a few spots open yet to give us a virtual cheers. We have a couple of people in there, so I'm going to bring them in one at a time here. We'll bring in my friend, Mr. Lee, the man responsible for our caricatures.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Cheers,
So
man.
Lee grew up with us in Petoskey, went to school with both Justin and I way back in the day. And, of course, his family is the May family, the famous chocolatiers of Mackinac Island, of which Pete is very familiar with.
Oh, yeah. Pete,
Lee.
yeah. What's up, man? Man, it's nice
Good to
some
see you,
familiar
man.
Well, I think you captured us beautifully, and I thank you very much for the
Oh,
the
man.
Great graphic, man.
That was a quick,
Wonderful.
fun sketch. That was fun.
Yeah.
And I know Rachel feels out of it, so I can draw one for her, too, if she wants to be in it. So
I was actually probably going to try to commission you for something. So
Sure.
look for my email.
All right.
Got it.
I love it. Well,
But,
we appreciate you, Lee. Thanks for watching the show.
Yep, I'm drinking my, I got a whiskey, actually, from a gift. It's called the Yamazaki, so I'm drinking that for you guys.
Ooh, very nice.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, Japanese Scotch.
Somebody likes
Yeah.
you.
I like that. All right. Yeah, my wife is. This is a game around the house, Pete, that you inadvertently played in. Katie says it is so a word, and that's because if I said it, you understood what I said, then it counts as a word. That's my feelings on it. So that's the way it goes. And then we'll bring in guests from our first show. I do believe that Bart and Melissa joined us on the first show. And welcome back.
Cheers to you all. Yes, welcome back. And then my wife, who was sitting here, you saw a few minutes ago, she got called away by a child. So I will stay with the cheers and some old elk single barrel. Cheers to you all. Thank you.
Yes.
Much appreciated this evening.
Yes. Cheers, everyone. Thank you so much again for watching Histrey in Whiskey. Episode 4. Make sure to tune in on the 13th for the Mormon King of Beaver Island on the 24th, and the Mayor Pingree on the 14th. And I appreciate everybody. And we'll catch you next time around. Make sure you check out ilogicmedia.com for all of our great shows. We have sports, we have cooking, we have a horror literature. You name it, we've got it. Go check out ilogicmedia.com, and we'll see you all on the next episode of Histrey and Whiskey.
Awesome.
Rachel, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Let me talk about
Thanks, Rachel.
whiskey and history.
Whiskey
Thanks,
and
Rachel.
history.
Cheers.
Cheers, my friends.